Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving holiday. I know my Republican friends in Republican holiday tradition mode. Over the weekend, I'm sure you saw Donald Trump wants to repeal the dreaded Obamacare. Oh, I'm sorry. He wants to terminate Obamacare. We're getting much more forceful. It's no longer repeal and replace. It's terminate. And hey, what would a holiday be without the Republican tradition of, hey, let's kick the poor and working people? Again, this is Trump going, we should seriously look at alternatives. You had 4 years. In fact, if I seem to remember those 4 years, you had a super secret plan. It was all done. It was super secret. It was going to provide everybody with universal health care. It was going to be really cheap. I know you were thinking about car insurance conceptually, but hey, you made the comments. So we're reviving. Let's kick the poor. We're doing that because he was on the Truth Socials, saying the cost of Obamacare is out of control. Plus, it's not good health care. You had 4 years to fix that. Problem is, your party doesn't want people to have health care at all. Your policy is, and we all know, pay or die. I get it. He goes on to say, we had a couple of Republican senators who campaigned for 6 years against it and then raised their hands not to terminate it. It was a low point for the Republican Party, but we should never give up. And I'm going, must be behind in the polls. Must not be doing well if we're kicking this dead horse. Because here's the weird thing. Most people like it. Most people are happy with it. Most people, now again, if you call it Obamacare, the right loses their mind because anything with Obama gets people all worked up and bunched up in the panties and all frothy, if you will. But you call it the Affordable Care Act, and polling is very clear on this. Call it the Affordable Care Act. People are good with it. Republicans are good with it too. Call it the dreaded Obamacare, and there's a huge swing of people. No, Obama bad, because we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs. Hear the word Obama, lose your mind. Now understand, not a huge Obama fan, but not enough to lose my mind over. So hey, I guess we're repealing again. I guess that's the thing. And understand, as I said, Republicans hate working people. Look at what they say and do, especially what they do. And especially over the holiday season, when the fact of the matter is, as I've talked about numerous times, our Republican colleagues, along with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, increased childhood poverty more than double. And this is one of those things where you go, we were fighting it. We were fighting poverty. We were, especially childhood poverty. We were doing okay. The pandemic, a little bit of the tax credit did wonders. Dropped us from a high in 2018 of 13.7% child poverty rate down to 5.2 in 2021. And then, hey, thanks to our Republican friends, what then happens? Well, we more than doubled it back up to 12.4%. And you go, it's where we are. You look at Texas. Texas is a state that's kicking kids off of CHIP and people off of Medicaid. Why? Because they can. 58% of the kids, 58% of Texas's 1.4 million people who have been dropped from federal health insurance have been kids. So, it's good for the holiday. It's good to kick people when they're down over the holiday. And you wonder why. Over the weekend, you saw the Wall Street Journal, the newspaper of the investor class, come out with a poll that, asked the question about the American dream. Do we still believe in the American dream? Do we still believe in that concept that you work hard, play by the rules, that you can get ahead? And not surprising, only 36% of voters in this Wall Street Journal NORC poll said that the American dream still holds true. That's a huge drop from just a couple of years ago when 53% said that was the case in 2012, 48% in 16. We're down to 36%. And look, older people still buy it. My generation and older still say, if you put your nose to the grindstone, little elbow grease, you can do it. You can do it, kiddo. Young people aren't buying it. And the polling proves this, that this idea that, there's a reward at the end of the road for us is a struggle. Now, and this is across the political spectrum. This isn't just, those lazy liberal kids. This is across the political spectrum. People who are like, economically, we're fragile. Economically, we're struggling to pay our bills. Even if we're getting raises, we're still falling behind. And it goes back to the question I ask quite often. What good is an economy if the majority of people are struggling to keep up? What good is having an economy where people don't feel like they're getting ahead? Now, understand, I believe our media, especially right-wing media, plays a huge part of this. Continually saying, the economy's terrible, Joe Biden's horrible, Joe Biden's failing, or everything's horrible. Basically the outrage of the day. But a lot of people I talk to, they're having a tough go of it. But here's the thing. They were having a tough go of it before the pandemic. They were having a tough go of it 10 years ago. They were struggling. They were keeping up by running up their credit card debt. They were keeping up by taking out home equity loans. They were keeping up by going into debt. It's now that we finally got to this point, we're going, maybe there's something more to life than just running on the treadmill or the hamster wheel. Maybe. And now you got half the people in this poll saying that life is now worse in this country than it was 50 years ago. Only 30% think it's gotten better. And again, which side of the economic divide are you on? And this is the thing that gets me because, I have these conversations with people quite often, especially when you're talking economics. Because I say, look, a lot of the social issues that get thrown at us are designed to keep us pitted against each other, eating each other, divide and conquer, while they rob us blind. I keep coming back to if we reunionized our workforce, if we got people fighting for the right things, better wages, hours, working conditions, better opportunities, better health care, all of those things that would make life better, those things that are going to give us a step up on the so-called socioeconomic ladder, people wouldn't feel like the economy's stacked against them. Now, the weird thing is half of the people in this country polled by the Wall Street Journal here believe that the economy and the political system are stacked against them. And that I come back to is partially, and I would say overwhelmingly, I think how our right-wing corporate media likes things. Because if we can blame government for everything, it's the government's fault. They've rigged the economy for the rich. If you can get people to believe that they're hopeless and angry, it's easy to fleece them even further, as we've been doing in this country. So when I look at this poll, and look, I don't put an awful lot of faith in polling, but this is not a political question. This is across the board. How are you doing? How are people feeling? And weirdly enough, as they point out in the article, a lot of people's feelings aren't quite reality, because wages are going up, costs are coming down, things are heading in the right direction when you look at the economic metrics. It's just how people are feeling in this moment. The Reagan question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Well, 4 years ago, hold on, the pandemic started just about almost then. I'm better off 4 years ago than I am now, yes, because the pandemic hadn't really, I guess it did. It hadn't really hit. No, it hadn't hit yet. So yeah, better off then, because we didn't go through the devastation of the pandemic. And this is where, with Biden being saddled with all the inflation's your fault, Joe Biden, not so much. When you shut down an economy, when you destroy a supply chain, that's starting back up kind of difficult. But Republicans haven't missed the opportunity. Never let a good crisis go to waste, they say. And they haven't. And interestingly enough, it's all they've got. It's all they have coming into the next election is, Joe Biden caused inflation. They have no policies. It's like Trump saying we're going to repeal Obamacare. Okay, repeal Obamacare. What are you going to replace it with? And it's the same question I asked back when they wanted to repeal it 14 million times before. Okay, what are you going to replace it with? What is your grand scheme? Republicans used to believe in personal responsibility, but oddly enough, when you put a little personal responsibility into the Affordable Care Act, they lost their flipping minds. So what is the plan? Is it pay or die, as I've said conservative ideology is? Or does Donald Trump have a secret, super secret plan stashed away somewhere with the classified documents he wasn't supposed to have? Maybe, I don't know, but I got to tell you, I doubt it. So I guess the question is, do you still believe in the American dream? Do you still believe in this country that if you work hard, play by the rules, that you can get ahead? And if you're a young person, do you think the game is rigged? Because look, the pathway to the middle class that I was able to use isn't really there anymore. And with all of the fear of what's coming, with automation and robotics and all of the potential job losses and the frictional transition that's coming, would you feel secure in believing that? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So today, President Biden held a meeting, the first meeting of his Supply Chain Resilience Council, and took the opportunity to warn corporate America, hey, stop the gouging. He said, we know prices are still too high for too many things, that times are still too tough for too many families, but we've made progress. And look, this is something I said they should have done 2 years ago. If not for anything more than simply the optics of, hey, they're actually doing something. Just my thoughts. Want to hear yours. Let's go to the phones. Got Steve in Chicago on line one. Steve, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Had a wonderful holiday.
And I want to, great. So a couple of points, and I think you touched on some really important issues. Because, yes, it's true. If you ask people of a certain age, does the American dream still exist? It's not surprising that, yes, there's a difference when you look at the generational gap. For people who are baby boomers, for whom, there was this tremendous post-war benefit in terms of this confluence of labor, the destruction of the industrial base in Europe and in Asia, leaving the United States the only real industrial power on the globe. At the end of the Second World War, half of all the goods and services on the entire planet were manufactured in the United States. So, that just kind of goes to show you what kind of power we had, and by extension, the kind of power labor then had, because what were you going to do? It's not as if you could have outsourced the job to China in 1946. So this was a great opportunity. So a lot of these people who, think that the American dream is still there, yes, because for them it was, and that's understandable. It's just that they're not making the connection. They had a lot of opportunities, a lot of great chances to make the American dream work for them, even if they didn't get a chance to go to college. Those that wanted to go to college, well, there was this thing called the GI Bill. And, you could build wealth and you could buy a home. And, in the 1950s and 60s, you went in every couple of years and the same guy, sold you a new car. You traded in the other car. That was the American dream. So, but these people, I think, are divorced from the realities of today. Yes, they retired. They came into the workforce when it was a wonderful time to work and to be an American. There's this great documentary. The title eludes me, but I watched it a few years ago. A friend sent it to me, and they were interviewing people who had grown up as baby boomers, in the 1960s hippie generation. And this guy had this profound statement in which he said, we were a generation that felt like, we couldn't fall. No matter what we did, that society was going to catch us.
Yeah.
You could drop out of life, go and have some fun, listen to music, get into a van, hang out with your friends for a couple of years. You show back up at home, and there's a job at a steel mill waiting for you, at an automobile manufacturing plant. So you could go on to college, and graduate a few years down the road. Again, you just couldn't fail, but that just isn't the case any longer. The dynamic has changed, and the fact is that we still keep measuring things like income and earnings as a function of household income. Well, yeah, household income in 1969 was heavily dependent upon one person working. Now we're measuring it as a function of two people, and sometimes even more than two people, because families are being forced to live together. Extended families are living together. And we're counting all of those people, 2-3 people working, sometimes the kids working, and we're counting that as one income versus, and comparing it to what one person made working in a steel mill in 1969.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of questions here. And the other point I wanted to make is you couldn't be more right with regard to Barack Obama. I mean, he wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but there is context, in terms of how we got there. Coming out of the 1960s and 70s, and it's related to what I was just talking about, in the wake of Jimmy Carter, the Republican Party, conservatives in this country said, no, this country is moving way too far to the left in every way, shape, or form. The courts, our laws, everything, and we need a conservative revolution, a Republican revolution, and that's what they got. And so you get Ronald Reagan and then George Bush Sr., who should have had 2 terms according to what the conservative thinking, but he loses to Bill Clinton. And you and I are old enough to remember how, the Republicans and conservatives in this country went absolutely insane because he was the first hippie, the first 1960s brat, that was elected to president.
Yep.
George Bush Sr. was part of that World War II greatest generation. Bill Clinton was got stoned, didn't inhale, listened to that crazy rock music, and would have been at Woodstock if he could have made it. And they thought it was the end of the world if someone like that could ever become president, and he became president. And then you fast forward, the pendulum swings back, and you get George Bush Jr., and of course the economy tanks 2008, 2009, and who do we get? Barack Obama. Oh my God, their hair gets set on fire again. An African-American Democrat. Oh my God! And by the way, his father's from Kenya, and he's got this strange name that that strikes fear in the lives of every conservative in America, thinking he's some sort of Manchurian candidate. I mean, this was the surreal world in which we got Donald Trump. It wasn't out of some magical, strange place. This was all a buildup to Donald Trump, and then post Obama, what do we have? Well, you have a lackluster candidate. I think Hillary Clinton was among the most qualified people in America to ever run for office in terms of her experience, in terms of her knowledge base, and so forth.
Just a bad candidate.
She's a testament to the fact that you've got to campaign. You can't just, run on intellectualism. You've got to appeal to people. And it was seen on the part of progressives as a swing back to the center, whereas Obama was seen as a move in a progressive direction, even though he didn't govern that way. So the idea that anybody was going to get excited about a Clinton campaign in 2016, they sort of missed the mark. And what does Donald Trump do? Donald Trump walks in, and while 16 other people are competing for the same political real estate on the Republican side, Donald Trump capitalizes on hate, on fear, and nationalism and so forth. And it's no one's surprised who understands America, he starts to win.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We just don't sometimes measure the pulse of our country very well.
No, you're spot on, Steve. Appreciate the thoughts, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go to Alice on line 2. Alice, how are you? How was your holiday?
It was good. How was yours?
Fantastic. What's on your mind?
Well, what I wanted to say was, my son is in his 40s, and he and I were having a conversation over the holiday weekend about how his generation views the political crimes. climate and what's going on. And, my son was saying, we work hard, but we can't do anything because there's really no opportunities around here. And, I had to agree with him because once upon a time, back in the 60s and 70s, and the 50s, our little rural county, there was all kind of things going on. There were sewing factories.
Yeah.
There were coal mines. There were all kind of things, and all kind of stores. And now most of the coal mines are closed. There's no more sewing factories. There's retail, but nothing like there used to be.
Yeah, the identity of your community went away. I mean, we saw this in place after place when we did our tour last year in November. We saw it in place after place where, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, lost the rubber factory. You go to Akron, lost the rubber. You go to Toledo, they lost glass. I mean, you go to place after place, and the factory and the industry that was their identity has been stripped away, and all that's left now are dollar stores, repo places, addiction clinics, and the problems that you have in high poverty areas with drugs and crime.
Oh, absolutely. And our little rural county, because we are along, like 79 and a few other major highways, when my mother was alive and we had to go to the hospital one time, I was talking to one of the ambulance attendants, and he was telling me, and this was back in 2004, he said that our little county, just for them, and he even said, that doesn't include the ambulances for the volunteer fire departments and the other ones, they handled at least 4 overdose cases a week of, drugs are really bad. But my whole thing is this. When things start going south, so to speak, there's generally, you look, and there seems to be the Republicans, for some reason, always seem to be in charge. And if you just look at it, it's because instead of looking ahead to the future and going, okay, let's try this, they try the same old tired-out formula over and over and over. And, of course, one of the definitions of insanity is trying to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, Alice. Appreciate the thoughts. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
No, I mean, the reality is and I have these conversations with my kiddos all the time because, I remember I grew up in a world very different than we're in now, where you had local manufacturing, you had local, stores, you had a local flavor. Everything wasn't homogenous. And there's a part of me that goes, there was local ownership of things. You knew the guy who owned the local restaurant or the local five and dime, the car dealership. Everything now is being consolidated into the hands of the very wealthy. These hedge funds are buying up everything from your rental properties to car dealers to virtually everything you touch is now corporate controlled. And this is where, again, I come back to that idea of the American dream, kind of going away. Putting out your shingle isn't as easy as it used to be. I'm hopeful. I am, as I always am, but I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1936. That was the day 1,200 production workers at Detroit's Midland Steel sat down for higher wages, an end to piecework, and union recognition. The strike was called just before noon. When 800 on the second shift arrived for work, they readily handed their lunches, cigarettes, and newspapers through the windows to the sit-downers. The UAW had embarked on a massive organizing drive throughout the country. Days earlier, the GM sit-down strike had begun in Atlanta, spread to Kansas City, and would eventually reach Flint, Michigan. But the UAW was also organizing part suppliers like Midland, who produced car body frames for the industry. The UAW first used the tactic of the sit-down strike 10 days earlier at the Bendix Products brake plant in South Bend, Indiana. There, workers had just organized with the UAW. They braved 8 days in an unheated factory during winter, demanding the company union be dismantled. At Midland, the workers stayed in the plant, stating they would hold out till Christmas if they had to. Within a week, the Midland strike had idled 72,000 workers at Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge, DeSoto, Briggs, and Ford's Lincoln Zephyr plants. Stakes were so high at Midland that the strikers threw a suspected company spy out a second-story plant window. Just as Midland workers returned victorious to their jobs 10 days later, thousands of others began sitting down at their jobs. Rubber workers in Akron, glass workers in Ottawa, Illinois, bus drivers in Flint, Kelsey Hayes brake workers, and aluminum workers just 2 blocks from Midland were all sitting down for union recognition, wage increases, and better working conditions. The massive strike wave had begun. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
In one of their satirical songs, the Austin Lounge Lizards lampooned the ridiculous bigotry of some Christian factions, singing, "Jesus loves me, but he can't stand you." That could be the bellicose anthem of a quasi-religious Republican front group with a very sweet-sounding name, Moms for Liberty. Far from sweet, however, these moms are funded by rich Republicans to be ground troops in the party's culture wars. Essentially, an anti-liberty campaign against people, books, teachers, and ideas they don't like. In the last few years, squads of these moms have turned into political hate groups, persecuting small-town school board members by baselessly accusing them of conspiring to indoctrinate children with pornography, hatred of white people, and liberal thinking. Having stirred up dust devils of division and fear, the momsters ran candidates in local board elections this fall, hoping to take over public schools. But they miscalculated on an essential political reality. Most Americans are not right-wingers, bigots, or Christian nationalists. The group had counted on surprising voters in what are usually low-visibility, low-turnout races. But the extremists were the ones surprised by an aggressive voter pushback against their scheme. Indeed, various surveys show that the GOP's mom wing lost about 80% of its races across the country, even in major swing states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. For example, in the very conservative school district of Penridge, Pennsylvania, 5 far-right Republican incumbents were up for re-election. All 5 were swept out, turning the Penridge School Board blue for the first time in years. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help push back against right-wing politicizers of your school district, contact campaignsharedfuture.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Donald Trump was campaigning in Iowa this year, and not surprising. He said that during his presidency that he was, how did he put it? He was prevented. Let's use that word. He was prevented from using the military to put down those protests. Democratic cities had some problems, according to them. If you listen to any conservative, they'll tell you Democratic cities are all burning. They're all bad. They're crime-ridden. It's a horrible, horrible place. And we need federal troops to go in there to keep law and order. And he is now saying that the next time he's not going to wait. He's going to pull the trigger. He's going to get federal troops in there to put down those people. So I thought that'd be an interesting time to reach out to my good friend Rich Ojeda, who spent a little bit of time in the military, and ask him, what do you think of the idea of federal troops on American soil doing police work. That's why I've asked Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. Rich is the host of the Ojeda Live nightly hit on Facebook and YouTube. You can see that at 8:30 p.m. each night. Also, he's the chief cook and bottle washer over at the Turn Left Pack, the website turnleftpack.org. Rich, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime, Rick. I always appreciate being on your show. And, the thing about what you just said is what is the First Amendment? Does that not give people the right? Donald Trump is telling us that what he wants to do is he wants to establish a dictatorship, and that if he doesn't like things, he's going to automatically use the military might to basically, do away with, what he doesn't like. I mean, is he going to start sending his military to go after his opponents? Because, that seems like that's the path that he wants to be on.
But here's the thing. We've got a law in this country that says can't do that. The Posse Comitatus Act of, 1878. It's been a long-standing thing. We don't use federal troops without congressional action. And I had a conversation with someone today, and I said, look, this is the law of the land. And they looked at me like I was so naive and so just not getting it. They go, who's going to stop him if he does this? The Supreme Court? Who's going to stop him? The people that he's going to surround himself with? And that's the good question. In the event that Trump decided, hey, we're gonna send Rich Ojeda and his brothers in combat and sisters in combat in arms into Detroit, into Portland, into Chicago, what do soldiers do?
Well, let me tell you, first and foremost, this is one of the reasons why it's so important for us to make sure that we take back the House and increase the lead that we have in the Senate. We need to make sure that there's enough buffer there that if need be, our members in Congress can stop him from doing the things that he wants to do.
But here's the thing, Richard, this is my question, and this is what this guy asked me, and he's right. Who's going to stop him? The executive branch is the enforcement branch. Is the Supreme Court going to tell him to stop, and he's going to enforce the Supreme Court order against himself?
Well, I will tell you that, there are Michael Flynn's out there, but for every Michael Flynn, there's 25 that are solid. And I really believe that. And in the military, you have to follow orders, but you have the ability, regardless of who you are, you have the ability to basically refuse an order if it is unlawful, if it's immoral, or if it's illegal. And, there's no reason active duty without a doubt. Now using the National Guard gets used all the time for emergency reasons. But, this is what Donald Trump wants to do. We can see what Donald Trump wants. He has painted the picture of what he wants in America. He wants to be a dictator, and he wants to be able to use the military to crush his enemies. He wants, I'll tell you right now, too, I have been really thinking about this, the whole thing about Tommy Tuberville, holding on to promotions in the military. And I really thought, I heard this the other day, they said, he could be doing this because he wants Donald Trump to name these people. And in that case, Rich, Donald Trump will only promote the generals that he wants.
Rich, I said that months ago. I said this is Tuberville's game. He's trying to do what McConnell was able to do in the Supreme Court. There's no surprise. These people don't just do things without thinking, without having a focus group tested, think tank approved. They know what they're doing. They know how to rig the system. And I fear that that's the plan. That if Trump does get elected, that then you end up with a bunch of Michael Flynns leading our military, and then they do this kind of action.
At the end of the day, we are on the verge of having our democracy thrown out and a dictatorship started. And, the sad part about it is the poorly educated, and I don't care, I'm going to call them that, poorly educated. The people out there that are just not that smart that are falling for this garbage. Those are the ones. You watch any event that Trump is at, and they interview these people, and it's just like they're mind-numbingly stupid. But what they don't realize is that they're the ones that are opening the door for this to come in. And if it ever does happen, make no mistake about it, they're going to be the ones that are going to be hurt the worst. But I agree with you. You know, I'm hoping that people are paying attention. I'm hoping, you know, that people are waking up. I do believe that every single day there's more and more Republicans that are, you know, refusing to support him anymore. And I really do believe that, you know, the Republicans out there that's got something between their ears, you know, that aren't corrupt, you know, I believe that, you know, they're going to not support Donald Trump.
You know what I think is interesting? You know, the talk of sending in the military to go after those people. We're gonna bring law and order, but to get health care to people, no, we can't do that. I mean, look, if you wanted to bring the military and the military hospitals into areas to help take care of people, I wouldn't be horribly against that, because we're certainly not doing it as a society well enough. And I'm sure you saw over the weekend, Trump said he wants to go back after Obamacare. Wants to terminate it. Because, hey, we got to revive that again.
And that was something that he campaigned on. And that was something that over the 4 years that he was in office, it was always next week, next week, next week. Same thing as infrastructure. Yeah. Next week's going to be infrastructure week. Donald Trump campaigned on promises that he did not follow through with. And I really believe that there's enough people out there that are seeing that. I mean, I don't want you to hear Donald Trump talk about we're going to replace Obamacare. You had 4 years and you did nothing. And that's what we have to tell these people. For 4 years, he claimed he was going to replace it with something better and never so much has done anything. You know, Donald Trump is all talk. You know, he's all bark, no bite.
See, I'm not going there with you. Not going with all bark, no bite. Because I fear that if he is elected, he has already said, look, it's all about retribution. It's all about payback. I do believe you will see people like you and me put behind bars for not being on board with Team Trump.
Bring it. Because make no mistake about it. I'm telling you right now. You know, I'm willing to fight for this democracy.
Sadly,
I will stand my ground.
Sadly, you know, this is the position that we're in because of Trump. You know, even the thought. I mean, stop and think about this with me for a minute. I think 10 years ago, the thought of, you know, I'm going to use the military proactively in as a police force, and a president saying that out loud.
How did we go from President Obama to President Trump? I mean, that's complete. You know, that's why. I mean, we would have never known. You know, we would have never thought that somebody that was that morally bankrupt could ever elevate themselves to the highest seat in the land. And that's exactly what Donald Trump and them did. And oh, by the way, all the people that supported Donald Trump and worked on his campaigns, for the most part, are now all, you know, criminals that are turning state's evidence against him. I believe, and I'm going to continue to believe, that we're going to win this. I believe that Donald Trump is going to be held accountable for the crimes that he has committed. And, you know, I believe that people are waking up. And I'm going to tell you, you know, we're in this fight. I mean, I have already pretty much took my calendar. 2024 is going to be on the campaign trail. You know, I mean, I'm going to India to help build a domain page to help veterans. But once that's done, my focus is on these elections all across the country. You know, we're putting billboards up. We've already got billboards in Lauren Boebert's backyard. We're putting them up in Kerry Lake's backyard. And then we're going to go after Ted Cruz and others. You know, this is a fight, and we're accepting the challenge, and we're going to fight this battle. And as far as I'm concerned, that's my mission for 2024.
There you go. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Rich Ojeda, host of Ojeda Live, nightly hit on Facebook and YouTube at 8:30 p.m. each evening Eastern Time. You can also check out the work he does over at Turn Left Pack by checking out their website, turnleftpack.org. And let's talk about that for a minute because, look, we've got to go out and take out and get out of office some of these do-nothing Republicans. Look, I look in my backyard. You've got Scott Perry, who has literally done nothing in his time in the House other than cause chaos. Some of these people have to go, and it's going to take candidates with resources to be able to go after them.
Absolutely, and that's why, you know, we're out there right now putting up billboards in people's backyards But I'm hoping that there's people out there that are supporting. I tell people the days of going to the election polling station, casting your vote, and leaving and being done is not. And days are over with. You got to support candidates. You've got to be willing to donate to candidates. You got to be willing to knock on doors, make phone calls, call your family members, and have these conversations with them. If you got a family member that's a Trump balloon, the least you can do is try to talk some sense into them and explain to them. That's what we have to do. And I think everybody has a role to play. Nobody gets a pass. Everybody's got to be involved. Our democracy hangs in the balance. And I'm telling you, we got to be in this fight. Joe Biden is hitting home runs every day. You got people that are screaming he's loony. But you know what? The guy is absolutely getting it done. 14 million jobs, Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure, the CHIPS Act, the PACT Act, capping insulin at $35 a month. Allowing Medicare and Medicaid to fight for better drug prices. He's killing it. He's doing phenomenal work. And I'm hoping that people are paying attention. The problem that we have is the Democratic Party doesn't know how to tell their success story. So the Democrats got to get their heads out of their butts and start actually letting people know what they're doing. They need to be promoting Joe Biden and everything that he does.
No, you're right there. But Rich, have you heard? Joe Biden's old.
Yeah, he's old. But you know what? I will tell you that he coordinated NATO's effort to do what they're doing against Russia. I got to give him a big plus on that. I don't think that right there looks like he's senile. 14 million jobs. They ain't nothing senile about that.
But Rich, he's old.
Yeah, so is Donald Trump. And I'll tell you what.
No, that's their argument. That's all they've got to offer. There's no policy. There's no, hey, we're going to make your life better by doing this. It's just attack and outrage. This is my problem with Trump and the Republican Party right now. It's all. What was that? What's that saying? They're all hat and no cattle. This is it. It's all outrage and nothing to back it up. And that's what I hope we need to be exposing.
Well, I think so, and I think that I'm really hoping that the DNC and the DCCC start showing themselves and their actions.
Yeah.
Because it's more than that. We need to be supporting these candidates out here. And I'm going to tell you too. I think that ballot initiatives are very important. And states all across this country need to be putting cannabis and need to be putting women's choice on the ballots, because once again, we already know when you put that stuff on the ballots, people show up at the polls.
Yeah.
And if we show up at the polls, we're going to win every time.
No, it's what's interesting to me, since you brought up the abortion issue, Trump is now thinking that he can run on being a moderate on abortion. Because, Rolling Stone reported that, in recent weeks, according to two people familiar with it, Donald Trump has privately remarked that several anti-abortion leaders, people who have spent the past year pushing him to commit to enact a draconian national ban, now have no leverage to force him to do anything. So, he's trying to. Now, remember, this is the guy who said, hey, I got rid of Roe, kind of now stepping back and going, well, let's take the moderate position on it.
Now, look, I'm going to tell you now, that's another thing, too. The Democrats need to be making sure that they show him bragging about, bringing in the Supreme Court justices that would attack and do away with Roe v. Wade. He has championed that. And the Democrats need to make sure that everybody sees that and hears that, because point blank, it is a losing battle for the Republicans. It's over like 86% are for women's choice. It's just the same thing also when you're talking about cannabis and recreational. This stuff brings people out, and this is what we have to do. We got to make sure that people stay alert. We got to keep people fired up and motivated. You got to let these young women out there know that their voice has been taken from them because of Donald Trump. And if they show up at the polls, they're going to make him pay.
But here's the thing, and this is the last question I've got for you. Because again, I go back to this thing where we started with Trump saying he's going to use the military more often. What happens if he decides, you know what, the last election was rigged? We're going to have to put federal troops in every election, in every polling place in this country. Thoughts?
Put them there. Put them there. If you're gonna put soldiers at all the polling stations, that's fine. But make no mistake about it. They're not going to go in there and change people's votes. At the end of the day, the people that vote, the way they vote, that's how it's going to be counted.
Yeah.
I mean, I disagree with Donald Trump's usage of our military.
Right.
I don't think that, and I believe that if he is ever elevated back to that seat, I believe that the, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff will quickly explain to him that that's not how the military is used. So I don't think, I'm telling you right now, my goal is, and my belief is that Donald Trump is done.
There you go.
He's done, and we're gonna keep on this. I'm gonna fight this battle every day. I'm gonna fight this battle until he is in jail. And once again, if he becomes the president and he thinks it's okay to come after us, I mean, at the end of the day, I haven't done anything wrong. The only thing I've ever done is serve my country and fight for our democracy. So it is what it is. I will refuse to even call that man. He's not a leader. Donald Trump is not a leader. He is absolute the worst of us, and that's a fact.
Rich, appreciate the time, man. Always good stuff.
Anytime, my brother.
Thanks so much, our good friend Rich Ojeda. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1910. That was the day when thousands of people came to see the location where a fire had ravaged a sweatshop in Newark, New Jersey. The day before, at least 26 women perished in the inferno. The workers of the Alfred and Irving Wolf Muslin Undergarment Company made nightgowns. On the morning of the fire, there were more than 100 women crowded into the fourth floor workspace. The fire broke out when a can of gasoline was knocked over in the lamp company located below the sweatshop. The floors of the garment shop were wooden and strewn with fabric. The fire spread quickly. It roared up so fast. Even though there was a fire station across the street, the fire crew could not get there in time. It would become the worst fire in Newark's history. Desperate women tried to escape, but the fire safety exits were not adequate. Some of the women leapt to their deaths from the fourth-story windows. The fire became national news. No one was ever held legally accountable for the conditions that led to the fire. Less than a year and a half later, tragedy would again strike the garment industry when the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire would claim the lives of 146 workers. The events of the Newark fire faded into the annals of history. For years, no memorial marked the location. Richard Greenwald, a dean at a nearby university, thought that the women who died deserved to be remembered. As the 100th anniversary approached, he found the graves of 25 of the women and organized a memorial ceremony. He also helped to create a bronze plaque to remember the site. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So over the weekend, Trump was in South Carolina, and if you saw the Pimento Bowl, the game between South Carolina and Clemson, if you saw it, you'd gone, he won South Carolina by 12 points. In 2020, they were booing him, and quite loudly. And this is where, I think Rich is onto something where, maybe people are waking up to the reality that he's not all the rage anymore. He is getting booed. He is not filling up the big stadiums, and I don't know that we're going to see many. I don't know that we're going to see many of the big rally things where he's turn the cameras around kind of stuff. I don't know. We'll see. But he got booed pretty soundly. And our quote of the day comes from evangelical pastor Bob Vanderplaats. Now, no, Bob Vanderplaat was never a Trumper, so don't get all excited. He was a Huckabee Ted Cruz guy. So, him coming out against Trump isn't a huge deal, but it is a crack in the evangelical wing. He said, look, the number one hurdle for Donald Trump is I've never met a dad or mom or grandpa or grandma who have told me that they want their son or daughter or grandchild to grow up to be like him. And that's true. I've yet to meet even the most ardent supporter wearing the hat and the T-shirt going, yeah, I want my kids to emulate that. That's an interesting point he's made there. Also, Maria Bartiromo over at the F channel, she has come out and again gone back to the conspiracy of, Joe Biden's not really there. He's not really doing all this work. It's Barack Obama. Obama's calling the shots. And you go, no, I think you got it wrong. Because what Biden, and this again shows maybe how little she understands about neoliberalism and how radical the policies that Biden is moving is to moderate Democrats. Because this wasn't Obama's agenda. He was a free trader, we're going to, again, told me we're not going to pass free trade agreements, got 3 of them, and then wanted the TPP. Biden is actually reshoring manufacturing and doing the work that Obama didn't. So this idea that, Obama's calling the shots is just ridiculous. Just on the fact that make that argument. Now, Chris Christie, who pledges he's going to stay in the primary till the very end, till at least the convention. He said on Sunday that because Trump's never going to concede. And Christie said, look, no one will expect Trump to concede. He hasn't conceded the 2022 election. Who cares? He said that I think he'll go back to Mar-a-Lago. He'll continue to carp and moan and complain and say we don't deserve him. Anything that gets him out of this race and keeps him out of the White House is fine with me. Finally, something I agree with Chris Christie on. Now, I don't think Trump is going to lose the primary. I don't think there's enough Republican support out there for anyone else yet because they haven't gotten any traction with these play debates. There's nothing. And I don't know that any of them have the support to really take out any of the others. You got Mitt Romney saying that he'd vote for a Democrat, over Vivek Ramaswamy. I think anybody would vote for a Democrat over Ramaswamy, and I guess DeSantis as well. So who is, if Trump does falter, if he does go down, who would be the Republican nominee? I mean, because we really haven't had a serious debate cycle. I mean, it's been more whining and complaining, a little light on the policy fronts, a little light on how we're going to change things and make lives better. A little light on that. But I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think it's possible that Trump is not going to be the nominee? I know a lot of my friends are like, he's going to be indicted, he's going to go to jail, he's going to get convicted. And I'm going, maybe. I'm not holding my breath. I'm still of the presumption that he's going to be the nominee, and we've got to get out to vote to ensure that he doesn't find his way back to the White House. Because unlike Rich, I am concerned about federal troops in polling places. I am concerned with the appearance of that. Would you be? I want to hear it. Let me know. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back after this.
climate is changing faster than any time in human history. It is not about saving the planet. It is about saving us humans and many of the other living things that share this planet with us.
U.S. is warming faster than the rest of the globe, and every region is affected, Major Report warns. U.S. and China agree to work together to displace fossil fuels and tackle the climate crisis. Plus,
along with this assessment, I'm announcing $6 billion in new investments to make communities across the country more resilient to climate change.
Biden administration releases new funding to strengthen climate resilience across the nation.
All of those stories and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
There are a number of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who still deny climate change.
Is all of them a number? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen. Wow. A bunch of climate reports this week. None of them very happy.
No, unfortunately they are not. A handful of major climate reports dropped this week in advance of the next round of Paris Climate Agreement negotiations at the end of the month. Together, the reports underscore that the world is far off track from meeting targets to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels that are driving the human-caused climate crisis. The first report from the United Nations warns that national climate plans still remain insufficient to limit the global temperature rise to the 1.5 degrees Celsius aspirational target in the Paris Climate Agreement. Global emissions are predicted to drop just 2% below 2019 levels by 2030, not the 43% reduction needed to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. A different report finds that climate warming gases in the atmosphere reached record highs in 2022. But the biggest of all was the Biden administration's release of the fifth National Climate Assessment, compiled by several federal agencies. It's an exhaustive survey of climate impacts and risks in every corner of the United States. It describes how intensifying climate change is already here, already disrupting lives, the economy, and vital ecosystems, and is, quote, worsening across every region of the United States.
And worse in the United States than it is pretty much everywhere else across the globe.
Yes, overall, the U.S. is warming 60% faster than the rest of the world. And the report delves deep with an interactive atlas to zoom down to every county in the nation. No place in the U.S. is safe from climate change. Extreme heat, precipitation, and flooding events are all increasing in every region, impacting water supplies, crops, local economies, and more. The rate of sea level rise is accelerating. Back-to-back climate disasters are straining communities and ecosystems and hampering economic growth. Extreme climate events now cost the U.S. on average $150 billion a year.
Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
But the National Climate Assessment also offers hope. It shows how communities in every state are ramping up their response to the climate crisis. And it details a broad array of tools, solutions, and transformational adaptation policies to cut emissions and harden infrastructure for resilience against climate impacts we can no longer avoid. Here's Dr. Leah Stokes, climate policy expert at UC Berkeley, on CNN.
We have the technologies we need. And so all we have to do is deploy them very quickly so that we can get off fossil fuels as fast as possible.
Oh, that's all we have to do.
Also this week, the U.S. and China, the world's two biggest greenhouse gas emitters, agreed at a meeting in California to work together to tackle global warming by ramping up renewable energy and displacing fossil fuels. It is the first time that China agreed to set its own targets to cut all of its climate warming emissions, including the powerful greenhouse gas methane. Finally, this week, President Biden released another $6 billion in new investment from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act to help communities increase their resilience to climate impacts, modernizing the electric grid, upgrading flood controls and drought response, addressing environmental justice for frontline communities, and much more.
It takes time for the investments we're making to be fully materialized, but we just have to keep at it. We need to do more and move faster. We have the tools to do it. In this administration, America will be the place where great science changes what's possible.
It better change it quickly. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. We are off for the Thanksgiving week. Our great thanks to all of you for sticking with us over the past year, and to those of you who help us stay on your public airwaves by stopping by bradblog.com/donate. From both of us to all of you, please have a healthy, happy, and safe holiday. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Argentinian President-elect Javier Milei, he's in the U.S. today, I think in New York somewhere, going to meet with the IMF and some Biden administration folks. Not meeting with Biden, but with the administration. Donald Trump says he's going to go to Argentina to meet with Milei. And you go, this is where crazy comes together. Interestingly enough, though, where the story gets even better, Grover Norquist, the guy who said that he wants government so small in this country that he can drag it in the bathtub and drown it in the bathtub, he's taken a victory lap in Argentina. In fact, I guess he's there because one of their sister groups, to Americans for Tax Reform, this Argentine Taxpayers Association, kind of funded by them. So you go, why are we funding bad ideas across the globe? Why are we exporting our crazy? Isn't the world crazy enough? And here to share some thoughts on just how bad things could get in Argentina, I've asked our good friend Mateus Vernango to come talk with us. Mateus is a professor of economics at Bucknell University. Mateus, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rick.
So let's start with just how crazy is this guy? I mean, I read something that said if he raises taxes, he's going to cut off his arms.
Oh yeah, no, he said that, if anybody, runs a debt, next year we're going to have a surplus. And if anybody, spends more than what we have, he's going to fire everybody. And, it's a funny thing. I mean, he's going to fire a lot of people in Argentina. So the situation is not easily resolved, with things like that. He's out of control in ways that, would make Trump seem calm and composed. That's what we're talking here. He loses it on TV, and he would say things that, you'll be fined if I repeated the things that he says out loud on TV. He's blipped all the time. So, and he completely loses it, several times. So it's well known. So he lost it right before the election in an interview, and he was shouting about the voices of people talking in the studio. And there was somebody that worked there, that had a phone, of course, behind the cameras, and then they showed the studio is empty, dude, so the voices are in your head. So that's the level that we're talking about. He said two things. I'll say how strong his election was. He won for with a difference of 11 points, percentage points. So a very strong sort of showing. He said two things that in Argentina, if you say those things, you're dead. He said that he hates Diego Maradona, and he said that the Pope is the representative of the evil one on earth. And and the church did have particularly some priests that in poor neighborhoods had organized masses and against him, so explicitly, because of this sort of thing. So, and still he won handily.
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is, look, any politician standing for re-election in a country that has 140% inflation. I mean, we're losing our mind over what's the inflation rate been here? I guess total about 19%. They said
3.5.
Oh,
3.5. So we have no inflation. I mean, it's 40 plus. You have to, the average growth rate over the last decade is 0.2. So the economy has sort of been flat and stagnated over the last decade. So it's a lost decade, and with accelerating inflation. So things are somewhat dramatic.
Yeah, and you got 40% of the country living in poverty. You've got real problems.
Yeah,
And
let me just put a footnote there, because people have a tendency to. So Argentina, that's the local poverty line, which so it went from 25% a decade ago to 40%. But that's each country defines its own poverty line. So if you look at the World Bank, so I wrote something for with a friend in a newspaper in the Philippines, and we were trying to explain to people in the Philippines what's going on. And of course, people in the Philippines don't know anything about Argentina, and so they tend to think that this 40% of poverty is a poor country. But if you look at the World Bank measures, so that are comparable, similar measures, the World Bank does measure. So by the $365 per day measure, Argentina has 2.5% in poverty. The Philippines has almost 20%. And so, it is a very bad situation of a country that it's an upper middle income country. So you still have people immigrating from Bolivia, Peru, and Paraguay into Argentina. So it is dire, but it's not a poor country by any sort of measure. But it's a dramatic crisis. It's a meltdown of the economy, and it's the second meltdown in 2 decades.
No, the reason I bring it up is because I don't think most Americans know much about Argentina either. So let's not just blame the Philippines for not knowing anything. I don't think we do either. But for me, the message of someone who, this guy's literally crazy, talks to his dogs and does all kinds of other weird things that I find,
And the proposals are very crazy. I mean, he has proposals proposals that would make any sort of right-wing libertarian in the U.S. Grover Norquist would be sort of afraid of him. He wants a market for human organs. So if you want to sell your whatever, you should be able, whatever, you have 2 of those. So if you have 2 of something, you can sort of sell it. I mean, there are little chances that he will do some of these things, but certainly he has proposed a series of very crazy things, like closing the central bank, dollarizing the economy. Some are absolutely insane. He is also, I should say, peculiarly, because he says he's a liberal and loves Hayek and Friedman and all of those things, but he's very much for authoritarian governments. He does praise the Argentinian dictatorship, which ended 40 years ago. And is very harsh on abortion rights. So he said that Argentina has legal abortion passed in Congress, so it's not a court decision. So it's a law that passed by majority in Congress, and he says that he's going to try to overturn that. I'm not sure he will have the votes in Congress, but that's the agenda.
No, but he's described himself as an anarcho-capitalist.
Yes.
Which plays into, sell your kidneys, because, at the end of the day, what I fear we're going to see again is that pendulum swing from, what is socialism or, the commons towards privatize everything, fire sale across Argentina. And not just Argentina, but a lot of poor countries or struggling countries, because, hey, we need capital now. And I've seen this kind of stuff happen in other places. Working people get screwed badly in these scenarios.
So I'll say 2 things, that I think are important in this context. So in the 90s, we sold out the oil company that was a national oil company. Argentina had large amounts of natural gas, and it was self-sufficient. That was privatized for tiny amounts of money. The Spanish company, it was bought, the beauty of this, it was privatized. But who bought it? A national company owned by the government of Spain. Yeah. So we had a state company, but it was a foreign state company. What did they do? They milked all of the, already existing infrastructure, used all of the gas, exported it most of the time, and didn't do any prospection and investment, nothing. So finally, after several years, we were close to getting this in Vaca Muerta, which, the literal translation is dead cow. In this place, we have shale oil and shale gas, and large amounts, and lithium, I should say. I should say also our friend Elon Musk, very interested in the election of Milei in Argentina, and not just Trump. And he says already we're going to privatize it. So what we're going to do is we're going to privatize it again, after the cost it had, to renationalize, do the investment. We just finished a gasoduct so that, we can reduce the imports of natural gas, and this is again going to be all sort of dilapidated for probably some foreign company buying it and and getting the resources. So
yeah, but
yes.
isn't that the message? That isn't that privatization? Whether it's turnpikes or parking or gas. I mean, I look at the Indiana Turnpike as our cautionary tale. You sold it off to a foreign company, they ran it in the ground, and then you had to invest back into it to sell it again.
Yeah. I know that's there's certain things that are associated to well-being, national well-being, and so in which foreign firms and private corporations don't do the sort of investment that it's needed because it's heavy, large sort of amounts of investment, and the return is very long run. So they don't have the sort of time spent to do those things. So the state. That's again, we talked always about that. It's one of the myths about the American economy. Then it's all corporations and private agents and the whatever they call it, the job makers, or it's not job makers, but that people that employ people with
job creators.
Job creators. There you go. Sorry. And when a good chunk of this stuff that it's central for the job creators to be able to do stuff is at the end of the day that you have the visible hand of the state behind helping. It is I don't want to throw a lot of praise on Obama, but but Obama when the famous phrase that he said and was sort of chastised because he said that if you have this you didn't make it alone, and you didn't. That he was absolutely correct on that. People do live in societies, and societies provide lots of of services, public goods that allow them to do those things. So privatization will be sort of a brutal thing. Also, the exchange. So next year, expect a significant depreciation at the beginning of the peso, and a large reduction of the real wages in Argentina. So he also is going to do a big fiscal adjustment, and so we're going to have very, very high unemployment. So the first year, he's going to be very rapidly very unpopular.
So what as an economics professor, thinking about a country with 140% inflation, what would be a better path than slashing the size of state spending, privatizing everything, causing the kind of mass chaos that you're talking about, massive unemployment, gutting, investments, because we know what this is going to be painful for working people. And look, the unions and social organizations in Argentina are already vowing to fight it. But
yes.
If he's hell bent on it, is there a way for them to stop this? Given the fact that he already probably thinks he is the king.
He will. I mean, people will be in the streets. As I said, he will be very unpopular soon. There are alternatives. Not that So inflation, the fiscal deficits in Argentina are not that large. They're probably not larger than in terms of the size than the U.S. deficits, 5-6% of GDP. So that's not the issue. What Argentina, the problem of Argentina is not a fiscal problem. The problem of Argentina is a dollar problem. We don't have dollars. We didn't export a lot sufficiently to accumulate reserves. Every country in the world, the U.S. is the only exception because the U.S. has and produces its own dollars. But China is sitting on top of $3.2 trillion of reserves. Brazil has $360 trillion of reserves. Argentina doesn't. Argentina is close to, it has whatever it is. The reserves are 15 billion dollars or something like that. Once you take the things we owe, it's negative actually. By the way, he did promise he would stop dealing with China and had to backtrack immediately on that because part of the sort of countries that have given us money, it's China. Argentina was paying the IMF, which is a sort of an incredible thing, not with dollars. We were paying it with yuan, with renminbi, with the Chinese currency, because we didn't have enough dollars to pay. And that's unprecedented in the history of the IMF. And so how do you stop an inflation of 140%? And what caused this inflation of 140%? When you don't have any dollars, and you have to make these payments, a lot of people say, well, and the interest rates in Argentina, I should say, were kept very low. So in the case of Argentina, I always say it's one place where interest rates should have been higher. So the depreciation of the peso is much higher than the interest rate in pesos. So if you hold dollars, you'll be more protected against inflation than holding pesos. The interest rate on pesos is very low. It's below inflation. the depreciation of the peso very large. So you want to hold dollars. So everybody buys dollars. That's, once your currency depreciates, the price of everything that it's imported, and Argentina imports a lot of things, goes up. And so wages are lower. We do have strong unions. So that's a good thing that we do have. And so unions go and battle for higher wages. But, what happened with higher wages? They also push up prices. So you end up with a spiral. And so what we do have is very high inflation because of that. How do you stop that? You have to stop the exchange rate. So you have to stop. Somehow you have to get the dollars. And that's what he's doing here. He's in New York talking with the IMF, trying to, negotiate not to pay enough and perhaps get some additional dollars, hoping that we're going to have a better year in terms of exports and accumulate a little bit of dollars. So that would be the sort of thing to do. It has nothing to do with slashing spending or anything like that. But it's unlikely that would happen. So what if you ask me, what are they doing? And what they're doing is essentially what Republicans do here. They're not interested in constructing anything. They're interested in destroying things. If you break things, it was Friedman's sort of idea. He called it, starve the beast. Let them spend, but cut the taxes, and then complain that they don't have enough money to pay for all of these benefits, and then we cut the benefits. So the idea is to create havoc, because in the havoc they can destroy all of the institutions that still exist, sort of the era of the welfare state, which even in a middle-income country like Argentina are important to give people a decent amount of well-being. If you have a problem in Argentina and you go to an emergency room, it's for free. Nobody will charge you for, we have a national health system. So it's obviously, not top-notch, but, nobody goes broke because they don't have access to health. That's civilized, I would call it. So the strategy of people like Trump, of Milei, of Bolsonaro in Brazil, is to destroy things, not to build things. And then that's the commonality, I would say.
Scary times ahead. But again, this isn't a new movie. I fear we're going to see lots of pain and suffering out of this if this guy does what he says he's going to do. But Mateus, as always, I appreciate the thoughts, the input. Good stuff.
Thank you for having me.
Our good friend Mateus Fernango. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Is extreme austerity the future? Is that a good thing? I don't think so. Want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Back after this.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is one of those things, again, the war between capital and labor, public and private. It's just not in Argentina or Brazil or places like that. It's right here at home. And you've got the Grover Norquists of the world pushing this kind of agenda where nothing should be in the hands of we the people. And again, I offer that challenge of, what is it that we used to do for ourselves? That my grandparents' generation, our grandparents, invested in, built, and maintained for the use of we the people, that we then sold off to private interests because they told us they could do it better, faster, cheaper, more efficiently, all of those things. That actually worked out to what they said it was going to be. Parking? Let's ask my friends in Chicago. Nobody's thrilled with the parking system. Or Harrisburg or Pittsburgh or a lot of major cities that, strapped cities were going, hey, we need cash. Can't raise taxes because we took the Grover pledge. So we're going to sell off parking. We're going to sell off water and sewer. We're going to sell off what we built for ourselves, highway systems. We're going to sell this stuff off to private corporations whose goal is not to provide a service. It's to make a profit. It's to cash in. So are we surprised then that they run it into the ground, suck as much out of it as they can, and then dump it back onto the backs of the taxpayers, who then reinvest in it because we need it, only to then sell it off again? I mean, you go, how dumb are we? And as I've said, this is not new. The war between capital and labor is not new. Private versus public, not new. It's just the other side has such, they've got the resources to promote it. When working people start talking to me about, we need to have stronger, austerity programs. We need the pendulum on the side of capital because they're the job creators. And you go, no, they're not. Most quote unquote job creators are simply reacting to a market of consumers who demand something. I had a very rich uncle who owned a business and said, look, if someone didn't demand my product, I'd be out of business. I'm going to serve. I don't do anything out of the goodness of my heart. I serve the demand. If you don't have the demand, there are no job creators. Which is why, again, I go back to what Biden has done. Biden is investing in the country. The infrastructure bill, huge. The CHIPS Act, huge. In fact, on the CHIPS Act front, our friends over at CWA put out a press release today that pointed out that because of the CHIPS thing, because of the investment, they have signed a significant semiconductor manufacturing neutrality agreement with this Akash Systems. They make their chip maker. They announced a labor management neutrality agreement, which means that the union can organize the workers. If the workers want a union, the company's not going to stand in the way. They're not going to hold captive audience meetings. They're not going to fire people. They're not going to threaten people. They're not going to harass and intimidate. They're not going to do any of that. They're going to say the workers want a union. There'll be a union there. And I say this is all because of Joe Biden. This is all because of Biden saying, look, we're going to make chips in this country. We're going to build factories in this country, and we're going to use union labor to do it. And what we're seeing in this instance, there will be union labor who are going to build the facilities. There will be union labor who will do the production. There will be union jobs to support people and to be able to make sure that we have family-sustaining wage jobs. Now, what's interesting to me is the CEO, the co-founder and CEO of Akash Systems, said Akash Systems is committed to investing in the American workers who will help us bring semiconductor production back home to the U.S. and build the foundation of innovation that will keep our country on the cutting edge. Do you think he'd be taking this position if Joe Biden hadn't, kind of mandated that in the language, put that right in there front and center to go, hey, you're going to do this with American workers. You're going to do it with a project labor agreement. You're going to hire people who are going to make a decent wage so that it reverberates through the economy. This is the kind of stuff we need to be doing much more of. Not gut and austerity, and certainly not make things so small we drag it in the bathtub and drown it. But actually, high road, high competition. Compete on the right stuff. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do you give Biden credit for that? I know I do. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1910. That was the day when thousands of people came to see the location where a fire had ravaged a sweatshop in Newark, New Jersey. The day before, at least 26 women perished in the inferno. The workers of the Alfred and Irving Wolf Muslin Undergarment Company made nightgowns. On the morning of the fire, there were more than 100 women crowded into the fourth floor workspace. The fire broke out when a can of gasoline was knocked over in the lamp company located below the sweatshop. The floors of the garment shop were wooden and strewn with fabric. The fire spread quickly. It roared up so fast. Even though there was a fire station across the street, the fire crew could not get there in time. It would become the worst fire in Newark's history. Desperate women tried to escape, but the fire safety exits were not adequate. Some of the women leapt to their deaths from the fourth-story windows. The fire became national news. No one was ever held legally accountable for the conditions that led to the fire. Less than a year and a half later, tragedy would again strike the garment industry when the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire would claim the lives of 146 workers. The events of the Newark fire faded into the annals of history. For years, no memorial marked the location. Richard Greenwald, a dean at a nearby university, thought that the women who died deserved to be remembered. As the 100th anniversary approached, he found the graves of 25 of the women and organized a memorial ceremony. He also helped to create a bronze plaque to remember the site. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
In one of their satirical songs, the Austin Lounge Lizards lampooned the ridiculous bigotry of some Christian factions, singing, "Jesus loves me, but he can't stand you." That could be the bellicose anthem of a quasi-religious Republican front group with a very sweet-sounding name, Moms for Liberty. Far from sweet, however, these moms are funded by rich Republicans to be ground troops in the party's culture wars. Essentially, an anti-liberty campaign against people, books, teachers, and ideas they don't like. In the last few years, squads of these moms have turned into political hate groups, persecuting small-town school board members by baselessly accusing them of conspiring to indoctrinate children with pornography, hatred of white people, and liberal thinking. Having stirred up dust devils of division and fear, the momsters ran candidates in local board elections this fall, hoping to take over public schools. But they miscalculated on an essential political reality. Most Americans are not right-wingers, bigots, or Christian nationalists. The group had counted on surprising voters in what are usually low-visibility, low-turnout races. But the extremists were the ones surprised by an aggressive voter pushback against their scheme. Indeed, various surveys show that the GOP's mom wing lost about 80% of its races across the country, even in major swing states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. For example, in the very conservative school district of Penridge, Pennsylvania, 5 far-right Republican incumbents were up for re-election. All 5 were swept out, turning the Penridge School Board blue for the first time in years. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help push back against right-wing politicizers of your school district, contact campaignsharedfuture.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently Donald Trump won't tell the Manhattan District Attorney who their experts are going to be. I guess there is a big battle going on who Trump plans to call in the case of the payments, the hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. Who could that expert be? I gotta wonder. And it's one of those things where my mind just goes into weird places because hey. This is now our politics. We've got a chaos merchant running for president. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. Maybe a little thought on the hush money. Our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. You want me to give you the first name?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Mike Pence. How's that? Is that believable? No. Now, wouldn't that be a trip, though? Come on.
That would
wouldn't
be.
It?
No, look.
Oh, wow. And then John Bolton.
Yeah, I don't
favorite.
think so.
That's my favorite. So, yeah, right. Yeah. The Trump lawyers and the prosecutors are battling. It's just amazing. They're battling over the whole thing.
We'll see where it takes us. Again, it's all about the chaos. And look, I think this again is more of him just, belittling the system and because for a certain segment of the base, him taking on the system is what they find. That's why we love the guy.
Well, when this all started, I think it was right after the first one, we were talking about not so much what he was, what they were going after him for, but I remember on your show we were talking about the process, what it was going to be like. And it's just going to be, an endless series of everything is what's going to happen. And tactics, it's the whole court system. I was reading the report today about the Florida judge and kind of setting a standard for what's going to happen with the rest of them. Because you know what else is going to happen here, Rick? They're going to go into one court and say, well, wait a minute, we're in another court here. We need time. It's going to be like a domino.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's when you're in this deep, and I was talking to somebody the other day because they have the belief that they're just piling on to poor Donald, and I'm going, no, not piling on. This is a guy who did a lot of stuff. There's a lot here.
Right. Well, the part of the problem is that with the perception that this all happened like planned, it all happened at once, and a lot of people will say, well, why didn't they ask me? Why didn't it happen before if they had something? Well, the whole process takes a while. He was involved in so many things, and then all of a sudden, they start coming one by one. I mean, There were so many things going down.
And look, if you're going to go after someone of his stature, you better be right. You better have the T's crossed and the I's dotted and ducks in a row and whatever else you want to throw out there. It better all be right.
Well, sure. And also, I mean, look, it tests the system because this is the first time in our country's history that a president has been indicted. So the whole thing tests the system is what happens. And then there's going to be established in the beginning of this, I mean, this is the other thing. What his lawyers are doing in almost all of these cases, inevitably, Rick, as you know, they're establishing grounds to appeal.
Correct.
That's what they're doing. From day one, anything said, does the judge say something? Does the judge do something? The judge's hesitation to, find him in contempt, everything is trying to establish grounds for future appeals, to appeal this thing, out through a couple of years. Look, the whole motive here, I'm not talking about what he's doing with Manhattan, but the whole motive is to have this all go and not be decided prior to the election.
Sure. So that he, if he's elected, then maybe you can quash some of it.
Well, another thing too. Somebody once told me about 3 weeks ago that, well, no, wouldn't you want this to be determined before the election, the decision? I'm like, absolutely not. Not in this case. No, not at all.
So you don't want the case decided before the election? You prefer
the in doubt, and then you know what they'll say? Well, if they had him certain on this, why isn't he being convicted before the election if they were certain? So this is all motive.
Yeah, no, good point. We'll see. I mean, personally, I'd like to see this over with by election time, because I don't want him to be able to go and use because I don't even know if he could or what that would look like. But here's the thing. He's talking about he wants to use the military in an expanded role to go into cities and break up riots. And my mind goes to, I envision him going, our election system's a mess, Bob. We're gonna have to send in federal troops to oversee the elections. I can see that happening.
Well, he has publicly said that, and this in itself blows my mind, when he publicly said, they need to start going after, these people that are going after him, the Justice Department. The Congress needs to start doing that. It's just absolutely amazing. Normally you can't say those types of things. It would be obstruction of justice in any other case.
Yeah. Now, do we ever get back to what was normal? I mean, is there a reset possible to where this isn't, 15 years ago, this was not normal. This was not our politics. Look, was it perfect? No, but this is chaos for the sake of chaos.
Well, this is why you have one of the largest departures in the last, X amount of years from the Congress. And if you're noticing the Republicans that are departing from the House, some of them, we know they've said that they're tired of it, and they're tired of the chaos, and they're tired of the, circus-type atmosphere.
Yeah,
some of them haven't said that.
This is the part that bothers me in that. Then if you're tired of that, then why don't you reach across the aisle and go, look, I'm tired of this. Let's get something done, so that you can then point to the other ones who are causing the chaos and go, and they're the obstructions. This is where I'm struggling with that.
Well, I can answer that. In previous times, that's what would happen. In previous times,
right?
If there was an atmosphere of chaos when I was there in the Congress. And I know I sound like, somebody, well, you're just old and you're saying, well, in my day, but it's true. When I was there, if people didn't like things like that, they did put together coalitions. The coalitions didn't come across as you're defying the speaker and the minority leader. They were just coalitions of what members wanted to do to keep the trains running, all right? And now, if you do, even if somebody has the intentions, some of these people that are leaving, even if they had the intention that was good and they wanted to do that, they will be absolutely brutalized, ostracized, money dumped in against them. This is a system where your litmus test now is, are you, quote, loyal?
Yeah, it's purity.
Are you loyal to MAGA? That's the litmus test. That didn't exist. There was no one entity. That didn't even exist with Reagan. The kind of modern father of the Republican Party, it didn't exist.
Yeah, and you also didn't have the 24-hour news cycle that the kind of media outrage machine that we have today, and it's gotten worse over the last 5 years. I mean, Fox used to take it up to a certain line. Now the stuff that I'm being exposed to is just out and out, calling for anarchy and chaos, and not good.
True, and as my daughter actually was pointing out yesterday, we were having a conversation about this. My daughter was saying, she said, Dad, when you were there, you didn't have the entire social media structure either.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And it's true. I remember they sat us down in 1995, and they said, here, Sid, click on this thing called the Internet. I'm like, well, what's that? So we didn't have the whole infrastructure of social media and how it's coordinated, and people spend money to run ads across it. We just didn't have that kind of thing.
Yeah, so Al Gore took credit for building it. Will he take credit for its destruction of democracy? That's what I want to know.
Like Frankenstein's child. Yeah, right.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst. I got to get your thoughts on the George Santos thing. There was talk over the weekend that he might resign. The speaker, Mike Johnson, said that, he he's going to take some time, consider resigning, because ultimately the House is going to have to vote to expel him, from what I understand. Any thoughts on if it's possible that he will resign? Maybe something they sweeten the pot with. Any thoughts on this?
Well, he hasn't been there long enough to have the expulsion potentially threaten, say 20 years of a built-up pension or something, of that nature. He hasn't had that. There's only been 3 members, if I remember right, expelled. I was sitting next to Traficant the night he was expelled. It was a very painful couple of hours. I remember, very clearly. We were trying to tell Jim Traficant at the time from Ohio, who's now deceased, that, you need to stop now. And he just kept moving on. Now, with Santos, it's a little bit different. As bad as Santos is, which is he is bad, once you have a problem in the court system, because I went through this too, where somebody said, well, you better step down, we're going to expel you. And I said, well, I'll step down after, I'm ready to go through the legal system. And then at that point in time, too, they were trying to get rid of people that worked for me. But eventually, you step out. And with Santos, he hasn't had the plea deal or the conviction, but the House Ethics Committee has forwarded, a formal expulsion. So it's okay, I guess, now, I think, to go ahead and expel him. The reason I say that is they've got to be very careful. Senator Menendez is under, he's been indicted, etc., and I don't think anybody would have the right to expel him because he has not gone through the court system. But this case is a little bit different because of the House Ethics Committee report and investigation that has been finished. It makes it a little bit different. Now, here's one big question, Rick, is that, does he have the 2/3 vote to he needs 2/3 to expel him? Is it there?
That's the question. I don't know. Will Democrats vote to save Republicans again?
I was just going to say, one thing the Democrats could do, some of them, enough of them, is to say, I'm not voting yes or no. They knew what he was like. They knew what he was doing. Now why are they waiting to the election year to do something? And then just don't do it. Santos needs to stay in for the paycheck. And then don't provide enough votes. And then what are the Republicans going to turn around and say, look what you're doing, you Democrats. You're supporting Santos. No, we're voting present.
Yeah.
Because you created this mess. You didn't take care of it. And we're not going to sit here and do this now. I mean, you could do that. And then they're stuck with him.
Yeah, I keep saying Democrats need to stop bailing them out. I said it when they threw Marjorie train wreck off of her committees. I said, I don't know why you're going to do that. Leave her there. I want her there.
Right. And it's like if Matt Gaetz got in trouble, the last thing the Democrats would want to do is to help get him out of there.
Nope.
You want to keep him.
No.
So he's on TV every day.
Yeah. Wow. I gotta get your thoughts on Thursday's big debate. Did you know there's a big debate on Thursday?
No.
Evidently, this is being billed by the Fox folks, Sean Hannity in particular, that this is red state versus blue state. Again, red hat, blue hat. Evidently, DeSantis and Gavin Newsom, they're going to have a what's been billed as a Herculean clash of red versus blue. Are you going to tune in?
No, I have actually heard about this. I actually thought it was part of the Onion joke. The Onion group that does all the.
I love the Onion.
Yeah, I thought it was that.
No. This is supposed to be what the presidential race should have been had the two old guys not been involved.
Now, why would they pick? Here's the other thing. I mean, if you were, because Hannity was doing this, right? This is all Hannity.
This is all Hannity.
Right. And then Hannity will be the umpire, I guess, for the two governors. Now, of course, the way they do it is, well, you've got two governors. Because if you were Nikki Haley or Vivek Ramaswamy, wouldn't you start screaming about this? That you should have been in there?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Although it's going to look silly, the whole thing.
If you're Gavin Newsom, why are you doing this?
Yeah, now that is my question I'm going to actually ask. I can see DeSantis doing it because, contrary to what all my friends say, DeSantis is going down the tubes.
Yeah,
I don't care what they say.
I think he's already down the tube. But I think if you're Newsom, you think, hey, I need to up my profile a little bit, just in case. In case of emergency break glass kind of thing. That's the only thing I can take out of it. He's not going to challenge Biden in the primary, but if something were to happen, he's already on the trail. He's already got some some things going on. That's where my mind was at.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way they build this in one of the articles, I think it was Politico or The Hill, one of the two. They build it that Newsom was the biggest surrogate speaker for Biden and for the White House.
Okay.
And he tangled, and had this, whole deal with Hannity, which I must say, he really did a good job.
No, he's good at he
was good, right?
I think he's going to mop the floor with DeSantis because I don't think DeSantis is good in these spaces. I think I just don't think he is. I don't think he can articulate his points very well.
Right. Well, because everybody, even the conservatives, were saying, "Wow, Newsom just really gave Hannity a run for his money." I heard it, a ton of times. So, he is kind of the top Biden White House, spokesperson out there amongst the governors. And so he would have a chance, if he did this, to defend Biden and also to bring out his record, in California. And so maybe this is kind of a moment for him to, put himself in there just in case, but also in there for the next run in 4 years.
Yeah, I'm a little miffed at Newsom over some of his, his vetoes of labor legislation.
Oh, yeah. Right, he did.
And look, I understand at a certain level you gotta keep those tech billionaires happy if you're planning on running for president. But if you want my vote, you got to do a better job than what he's done so far. At least that's my thought. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I'm probably not going to pay much attention to it because I really cannot stand DeSantis and just to listen to him. And I know I should because this is what I do, but I'm just not. I'm not interested in it.
The other thing. Look, this is a win for Hannity.
Oh yeah,
it's a win for him. It really is.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now he's bringing a Democrat on his show, and he's out there trying to provide both sides a voice out there, and he's Hannity, and he's an ultra-right conservative. But look what he's doing to bring quote debate to the forefront. So Hannity does okay on that.
Yeah, and here's what the message on Friday will be. Hannity helped put the stake in DeSantis' campaign.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, right.
Because I think Newsom's going to mop the floor with him. Finally, I got to get your thoughts on, evidently, we're going after Obamacare again.
Right. In my news notes that I put out to the stations today, I put snarky comments here and every once in a while. This one I couldn't help it, and after the headline, I put good luck. That was my comment. Good luck, because first of all, Trump promised beyond the wall. He promised to do something on the repeal. The Senate Republicans promised to do that. The House Republicans promised to do it. They had control of the government, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. And as a result of that, they're not going to be able to do it again, especially now. If they control the House, they can't do it. So this reminds me of the Kennedy papers too. He's going to release the Kennedy papers. Yeah. He released most of it or some of it, and then Biden did the same follow-up, most of it or some of it. And then Trump came back and said, well, if I'm elected again, I'm going to release it. Well, he didn't release it all the first time.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and it's like Obamacare. They're not going to do anything. It is literally, I would bet anything of anybody that would like to bet on the fact that he could actually, if he wins, and you have a Republican House and Senate, that he can actually do that. He can't. It's virtually impossible. The system would completely come unglued.
Yeah, but don't you think that's kind of the plan? I mean, the fact that he came out and said, if he's reelected, he's going to use the military in a more expanded role. Evidently, we're going to be sending them into democratic cities to stop bad things from happening. So then my mind immediately goes, and maybe here's something, because I said this earlier. My concern is if he does get away with this, then eventually we start seeing federal troops in polling places because last election was stolen, according to him. So we need the military in there to make sure everything's on the up and up, which is illegal. But I could see him wanting to do that.
Well, or if he gets elected and he serves 4 years, he turns around and says, "It's an emergency. The country needs me for 4 more. I'm not going to leave. I'm just going to stay here."
Wow.
Which is about what happened last time. So.
Yeah. But we will see. But Bob, as always, I appreciate the thoughts.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bob Ney. Seriously, I'm fixated on the possibility that could possibly happen. And look, what we see coming out of legislatures across the country, what we see coming out of city councils, horrible stuff. Democracy in action is all about, undoing the 20th century. And you remember when Roe happened? And look, I've been saying for at least 10 years that conservatives wanted to undo Roe. They wanted to make abortion illegal. And then eventually they were going to go after Griswold because can't have contraception, can't do that. And then eventually they were going to go after same-sex marriage and all of those things. We were going to put women back in the kitchen, blacks back in the fields, and gays back in the closet. And I got a bunch of people back then, say, "No, you're crazy. We've decided that could never happen. No one would allow such a thing." Well, the city of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, a college town, oddly enough, back in June enacted an ordinance outlawing what they call indecent exposure, public indecency, lewd behavior, nudity, or sexual conduct. And what you got were a bunch of LGBT community folks going, "Hey, that's kind of the same language they used back in the old days to go after us." And understand the moneyed interests that are pushing this kind of stuff. We're beginning to see the billionaire money going into funding crazy grassroots groups like the Alliance Defending Freedom, evidently a right-wing Christian hate group, which I don't like throwing that together, but it kind of is what it is. They're a group that was founded back, I think it was back in the 90s. Christians in the community fighting to restrict abortion rights, ban books, and gay people. That's their cause, and that's what they've been trying to orchestrate. And they're now citing the 1873 Obscenity Act, called the Comstock Act, which prohibited sending artifacts in the mail and things like that. But it's obscenity laws. They're citing that as the ability to go and make this stuff illegal, which means, in this little town, it's open season. And the question I have is, look, it's not my issue, but, first they came for the fill in the blank, and then they came for you. When do we stop them in their march towards Christian Sharia law? When do we stop the radical right? Look, I'm against extremism on all sides. When do we stop it? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any portion of the program, download the podcast. Always there, always available. As we tick down to our final live radio broadcast on Friday, I want to hear your thoughts. Share some thoughts with us. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks for being here. See you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.